Hilchos Erchin Vacharamin Perek Shishi, the laws of value vows and dedication vows, chapter 6. Today we're going to be learning about the second word in those laws. This law is Erchin and Charamin. Erchin means value of people or of fields. A person says, I want to give your value to the Bet HaMikdash. The Torah gives you a table on how much you have to give. A person consecrates his field and he wants to redeem it back from the Hekdesh. The Torah says how much the field should be bought back for. Now we're moving on to what's called Cherem. Cherem literally means, the way the Radak defines it, it means destroyed. Basically, when a person says, my property is Cherem, what he's basically saying is, I'm going to treat it as if it's destroyed. I'm not going to have any more benefit from it. I want only Hashem to have benefit from it. That's the basic way we understand Cherem. A little bit of a deeper understanding, which is going to come up later in the chapter, comes from the Chinuch. The Chinuch was the first person to codify, or one of the first to codify, all the 613 mitzvahs, and he gives a reason for each one. And he says, the underlying rationale of Cherem is like this. Everything that's in a Jewish possession is bim'on habracha. Any property of a Jew is in the domain of blessing. So when a Jew declares his property Cherem, he wants it to be destroyed. Essentially what he's saying is, I don't want my property to be in the blessed domain of a Jew. The moment a Jew relinquishes his rights to his property, it goes back to the original master of all property, which is Hashem. That's the idea of Cherem. Now today the word Cherem is a very negative word. When you say Cherem, you mean like excommunication or being ostracized. But in temple times, Cherem meant, it's basically a form of hekdesh. It's a form of making an object holy. And that's what we're going to be occupied with today. And we're going to see that there's different types of Cherem. There's what's called Chermei Shamayim, Cherem to heavens. It means where you want to give an object to Hashem. There's also what's called Chermei Kohanim. Some Cherems go to Kohanim. We have two Kohanim today in the crowd. People would declare their items destroyed, so to speak. They don't want to have anything to do with it. It would go to the Kohen. And we're going to see there's different scenarios when it goes to Hashem, when it goes to the Kohen, different laws that apply to each type of Cherem, and many different details about what you can convert into Cherem and what you cannot. But the bottom line is, Cherem is a form of making something holy to Hashem. Says the Rambam Halacha Aleph, Echad ha'omer, harei zeh hekdesh lebedek habayis. Whether a person says the more famous or common expression of consecration, I want this to be holy to the temple upkeep. Oy cherem levedek habayis, or he uses the terminology cherem. I want to consider this destroyed relative to me, and it should go to the temple treasury. Oy cherem lashamayim, or it's dedicated to heaven. I'm just going to translate from now on cherem as dedication. Okay, the context you already understand. That means destroyed relative to you, donation to Hashem, dedicated to heavens. V'chein b'chol nechasav, or if a person said not about one specific thing, about all his property, he says, Im Omar kol nechasav hekdesh, I want all my property to be holy. Oy cherem levedek habayis, or I want it to be a dedication to the temple upkeep. Oy cherem lashamayim, or I want it to be a dedication to heaven. Harei elu yiplu levedek habayis. In all these cases, whatever you dedicated goes to the temple maintenance fund. Avolim Omar cherem stam, but if a person doesn't say cherem to Hashem, or cherem to the temple, he just says cherem. I want this property to be dedication, without defining it. According to the Rambam, these types of declarations, the property goes to the Kohen. Shestam charamim lakoyanim, because an undefined cherem dedication goes to the Kohanim. Shenemar, because it says in the Torah, in the verses that talk about all the special gifts to a Kohen, there's 24 special gifts that go to the Kohanim. One of those, the Torah says, Kol cherem b'Yisrael lecha yiyeh. All cherem dedications declared among Israel should go to you. Halacha Beis, what property does a person have the rights to dedicate? Macharim Adam, a person can declare a cherem dedication, min bekarai umitzainai, from his cattle and from his sheep, ume'avodav umishivchaisav aknanim, and from his Canaanite, non-Jewish slaves and maidservants, umisdeach uzasei, and from his ancestral field. Aval lo yacharim kol behemtai, v'lo kol avodav, v'lo kol sedaisav. You should never declare a cherem dedication from an entire species of your property. All your animals, all your servants, all your fields, or any full type that you have for movable property. Shenemar, because it says, this is the basic verse which talks about cherem, mikol asher loy. A person can declare a cherem dedication from all that which he has, From means not everything. Mi kol asher loy, v'loy kol asher loy. From what you have, not everything. If you did, you didn't listen. You declared a cherem dedication for all your properties. Afilu hachrim kol nechasim. Even if it was everything you owned, harei muchramin, they are considered dedicated. Bein shachrim lakayanim, bein shachrim lebedek habayis. Whether you declared a cherem dedication to the kohanim or to the temple upkeep fund. Halacha gimel v'chol mi shehachrim reikdish kol nechasav. When a person does indeed declare a cherem dedication for all his property, loikhin kol ma sheyesh. Then it's not like we learned in chapter 3 that when a person dedicates an erech, let's say a value vow, we leave him, some basic physical and spiritual needs. Here we take everything. Afilu tefillin shebereishay, even the tefillin on his head. The ein tzarich leimar kleyom nusay ubgadav, certainly his tools, if he's an artisan, or his clothes. Shehakol hekdesh echedem. When you declare your entire property to be a dedication, it's all a dedication. Halacha dalid ma bein chermei kohanim lechermei shamayim. What's the difference between dedications that go to the kohanim or dedications that go to heaven? It says that Rambam shechermei shamayim hekdesh. When you declare something as a cherem dedication to God, it's considered to be a full consecration. V'nifdin b'shavyein. And like anything hekdesh, you can redeem it by paying its worth. Go to the temple treasury, pay what it's worth, get it back. V'yiplu hadamim lebedek habayis v'yetzu anechasim l'chulin. And like anything redeemed, the money that you give goes to the temple upkeep maintenance fund, and the property that which you consecrated goes back to you and becomes regular. But once you declare something cherem to the kohen, ein lohen pidyon le'olam. It's basically a gift to the kohen. It becomes his. All your rights are transferred. You can never redeem it. You can never buy it back. Elo nitanin lekohenim ketruma. It's given to the kohenim like truma. Truma is the 2% you give to a kohen from your crop. This cherem gift is fully theirs. Val cherem kohanim hu omer. In the same verse we saw before, what does it say about cherem kohanim? Whether you can buy it back or not. If you give it to Hashem, you can buy it back. Give it to the kohanim, can't buy it back. Val cherem kohanim hu omer, about the cherem to the kohanim, it says, lo yimacher v'lo yigael. It can never be sold or redeemed. Lo yimacher la'acher v'lo yigael le'bailim. You can't sell it off to somebody else. You cannot redeem it by the owners. Of course, if the kohen wants, he can sell it off afterwards. The point is, once it goes to the kohen, you don't have the rights to ask to buy it back. Halacha hey, ve'echad ha'machrim karka imitaltalin. Whether a person declares a cherem dedication of real estate or movable property, harei elu nitanin lekohen shebeoisei mishmar b'shah shehechrim. Which kohen gets it? There's thousands of kohenim. Who gets it? The one that's serving in the temple that week. Right? The kohenim were divided in 24 families. Every week a different family served. Whoever was there in the temple that week, he's the lucky guy. He gets the hekdesh. The Rambam uses the word kohen in the singular, which, as the commentaries imply, it basically means the owner can choose which kohen he wants. Goes to the temple, see who's there. Whichever kohen is his best friend, he gives that kohen what he wants. Cherem kohanim, cherem dedications that are given to the kohanim, kol zman shehein beveis habaylim, as long as they're still in the house of the owner, harein hekdesh lechol divreim. They're considered to be consecrated. They're holy, because you have to give it to the kohen. Shenemar, because it says, same verse here, kol cherem kodesh kadashim hu la'Hashem. Anything that's cherem, until it's given to the kohen, is considered to be holy of holies. Nosnei la'kohen, once you hand off possession to the kohen, harehin kechulin lechol divreim. They become his fully regular property. Shenemar, because it says, kol cherem b'Yisrael lecha yiyeh. Any cherem dedications belong to you. In other words, before it comes to the kohen, kodesh kadashim. Once it goes to the kohen, it converts into becoming his regular property, and that's it. Halacha vav kohen shehoisa lo yisdei cherem. This is a very interesting law. The commentaries debate it, where the Rambam got it from. The Rebbe has a whole sikha on this law. I'm going to translate it just the way the Rebbe explains it. A kohen got a field of cherem dedication. That means some Jew, made a dedication of his field to the kohen. He has it. Okay? Or a different type of field. Let's say somebody's ancestral field. A Jew made his ancestral field holy. And as we said, when Yovel comes, if nobody buys it back, goes to the kohenim. So bottom line is the kohen is holding on to a field that used to belong to a regular Jew. Either because the regular Jew made it cherem, or because the regular Jew consecrated it and it went to the kohenim after Yovel. V'hechrima. And then the kohen himself declares it like cherem. He wants to treat the field as destroyed. He wants to hand it off to the other kohanim. So the Rambam says, Harezu muchremes. The Kohen has the authority to do that. Because we're going to see in a minute, the next halacha, that a Kohen and a Levi cannot declare their own property to be cherem. But if it's a property that came to the Kohen from another Jew, he could declare that cherem. V'yoytza le'echav ha'koyanim, and like any other Jew, that property will now be split to the other Kohanim. Shenemar, because it says, there's an interesting verse, La koyen tia achuzasai. The ancestral field belongs to the Kohen. Now, the Talmud deals with the fact that this verse has some extra words. These words teach us, Melamed, Shesdei chermoi loy, kisdei achuza li Yisrael. That the Kohen treats a field that he got from a cherem dedication like you would treat, or like a regular Jew would treat, his ancestral field. She'im achrima hi muchremes miyad. That if it's cherem, it becomes cherem right away. Why? This goes back to the reasoning behind cherem. I told you before that the chinuch understands the concept of cherem as every Jew's property is blessed. The moment you relinquish your rights, you're saying, I don't want this property to be in the domain of blessing. I'm handing it back to the master, to Hashem. A Kohen is a step higher than a regular Jew in that way. Because a regular Jew, even though his property is blessed, he has the power to remove that blessing from his property. But a Kohen, he himself is bima'on habracha. The Kohen himself is essentially holy. The Kohen himself is a walking piece of God's possession. So his property doesn't even have the possibility to become cherem. Because what does cherem mean? Cherem means I want to remove something from the domain of blessing. But if you're in the domain of blessings, everything attached to you is automatically in the domain of blessing. That's why a Kohen regularly cannot declare his own property cherem. However, the Rambam teaches that if the field came from another Jew into the Kohen's property, it's not like the Kohen's essential property. It still has the rules of a regular Jew, which means that the field is in the domain of blessing, but the Kohen can remove that right and choose to put it back into the master's domain. That's the short version of the Rebbe's talk on this. The commentators, as I said, debate this halacha at length, but we're going to keep it short for today. Halacha Zayin Machar HaKohen's Dei. A Kohen got a field of dedication from a Jew, and then he sells it off. V'higdisha lekeach, and the buyer consecrates it to Hashem. Afilu haya halekeach habaylim harishaynim she'echrimua. Even if the buyer was the original owner. So think about it. I declared my field cherem to Hashem. A Kohen gets it. He sells it back to me. So you would think it's going back to the original owner, right? No. Harezu kisdei mikna. When I buy it back, it's considered to be like a regular bought field. The chezeres lakayin shemachra bayovel, and it goes back to the Kohen bayovel. Usually when you sell a property, you saw the other day, you sell a field, it's never sold for more than 50 years. It goes back to the original owner by Yovel. When a Jew declares his field cherem, the Kohen becomes the new owner. And he's the guy to which the property always reverts when Yovel comes. Aval karkayim mitaltalin shel koyanim u'leviim, but real estate and movable property that originally belonged to a Kohen or a Levi, einam machrimin noisan. A Kohen and a Levi cannot declare their property cherem. Shari emer basada, because it says by the fields. Here's the pasuk by the fields. Ki achuzas olam hu lahem. It is their eternal inheritance. Umitaltalin hukshu lekarkoyes Vacharamin, and movable property is compared to real estate when it comes to cherem. Shenemar, as it says, mikol asher lo u'mizdei achuzasai. Look at this verse. When a person declares cherem, anything he has, that's movable property. Field, that's real estate. So the same way real estate for a Kohen is achuzas olam, it goes forever, so too everything else also goes forever. The Kohenim cannot declare it to be cherem. Halacha ches. Now we're going to have a bunch of scenarios where something was already holy on one level, and you want to give it a different level of holiness. Hamakdish kodshe mizbeach lebed kabayis. You have it here. This is a sheep. It says korban. Okay, that means it was already dedicated to be brought on the mizbeach as a sacrifice. Now the person says, Hamakdish kodshe mizbeach lebed kabayis. I want this animal, which is already meant to be a sacrifice, I want it to be holy for the temple maintenance fund, which is a lower level of holiness. It says the Rambam, hekdesh chal aleihem. The second level of holiness takes effect on them. And what you do is, you evaluate the animal, pay that redemption money, pay the money, that's the second level of hekdesh, the bed kabayis. the money falls to the temple maintenance fund. And the animal itself is brought as a sacrifice, whatever you had in mind first. That's because when you impose hekdesh of the korban, that holiness goes into the animal's body. When you add the temple maintenance fund holiness, it doesn't go into the animal's body. It's basically like saying, I'm going to give money to the temple. So you can give money after you dedicate an animal, but if you go the other way, it doesn't work. Aval hamagdish kache bedek habayis lamizbeach. Look at the next picture, the opposite. You have an animal dedicated to bedek habayis. You were going to use it for the temple maintenance fund. And then you take that, the lamizbeach. You want to elevate it to the altar. And you say, I want this animal to be a burnt offering or a peace offering. Or I want it to be cherem dedication to the kohanim. You haven't done anything. The level of holiness for the altar cannot take effect once the animal is already holy for the temple maintenance fund. Why? We have a famous rule. We had this rule before. A person cannot consecrate what doesn't belong to him. Once you've declared the animal holy for the temple maintenance fund, it leaves your property, goes to the temple's property. You can't add new levels of holiness to that. It says that Rambam weiter, alachates ha'omer sher ze hekdesh la'achar shleishim yom. Okay? Guy has an ox. Oh, I put a picture of a sheep. Bad picture. He has an ox, okay? And he says, in 30 days from now, this ox is going to be holy. In the middle of the 30 days, he slaughters it. This is a picture of a sheep being given to drink. You see this little quart there of water? The custom is that you give an animal to drink before it's slaughtered. Yeah, because this way the skin is easy to come off. So I didn't want to show a picture of actual slaughtering. I put a picture of this preparation, okay? So you give the animal to drink. So the point is that he said in 30 days from now it's going to be holy. 15 days later, he slaughters it. It didn't become holy yet. So he cannot benefit from it. If afterwards he declares it holy to the Mizbeach, it's holy to the altar. But if he says, I want it to be holy already from now, after 30 days, so the holiness is already beginning now. If you slaughter it within 30 days, it's actually forbidden to have benefit from it because you slaughtered a holy animal. If you were to make it holy during the 30 days to a higher level of holiness to the Mizbeach, it's not holy. Because you can't impose that higher level of holiness, it's already not yours. Halacha Yod hamakdish oila lebedek habayis. Go back to this case, you have an animal which is already a sacrifice, already a burnt offering, and you want to bring it also to the temple maintenance fund. So technically, ein ba ella ikuv gizbarin bilvad. All you have to do is wait for the treasurers to appraise it. They tell you how much money it's worth, and you can already slaughter it in the temple. You have to give the money later, but you don't have to give it before you slaughter. However, the rabbi said you shouldn't slaughter it till you redeem it. Therefore, if you slaughtered it, it's okay, because biblically you can slaughter it before you give the redemption money. Whether a person is holding in his hand an animal dedicated for the holiest level of sacrifice, like a sin offering, a burnt offering, or a lower level of sacrifice, a peace offering, a thanksgiving offering. He can set them aside as a cherem dedication, whether to the kohanim or to the temple maintenance fund. If it was a type of sacrifice where he took responsibility to replace it if it's stolen or lost, let him give the money worth to the kohanim or to the temple maintenance fund. And the animals themselves, let them be brought to their original intended sacrifice as they were before they were consecrated the second time. What if the animal didn't need to be replaced? When you make a vow that an animal is going to be a sacrifice, you can either say Harei Alai, I take it upon myself, in which case you're going to replace it whether it's stolen or lost, or you could say Harei Zu, this animal is a sacrifice, and that means only that one, and you don't have to replace it. That's called Nadava. So if you have a Nadava animal, the Hechriman, and then you say, you know what, I want it to be dedicated to the Kohanim, Ketzad Paidinaisam, how do you redeem it? How do you figure out the value of this animal? So the Rambam says as follows. Oimdim we evaluate. Kama Adam Reitza Litin Bibehema Zu, Laha'aloisa Oila She'ene Chayavba. How much would a person pay for this animal for the right to offer it as a sacrifice even though he doesn't need it? you can bring a voluntary sacrifice whenever you want, even if you don't need to bring it for atonement purposes. How much would you pay to buy an animal which you know is going to go as a sacrifice? Whoever will give that amount, buy out the animal and bring it as a voluntary sacrifice, as it was meant to be. A Jew has a firstborn animal born into his flock, which is supposed to be holy to Hashem. He takes it and he makes it cherem dedication to heaven. Whether it was unblemished or blemished, it's dedicated. Certainly, if once the Kohen already received the firstborn animal, that's what you do with it. You give it to the Kohen. If after he received the animal, he made it cherem, it's for sure considered a cherem dedication. The Ketzad Poidinai, how do you redeem those? Same way. And then you evaluate. How much would a person pay to have the rights to this animal insofar as he can give it to whichever Kohen he wants? His relative or his friend. Whoever will pay that money, take the firstborn animal, give it to whatever Kohen you want, and the money will go to the temple maintenance fund. A person declares cherem meiser. This is the 10th animal. Every year, every farmer had to take all of his animals, count them by 10, and every 10th one bring as a sacrifice. So if he declares that cherem, it's basically like declaring a voluntary peace offering as cherem, because if it gets lost, you don't have to replace it, and therefore you follow the same rules as voluntary offerings, in which you ask somebody how much would you give to have the right to offer the sacrifice, and then you let it go. Every year, every Jew gave a half shekel coin to the temple. A person takes his half shekel coin and he declares it holy to the temple maintenance fund. It's holy. You have the right to do that. If you have your first fruits that you bring every year and you made it holy to the temple, they're not holy. You don't have the rights, it's the Kohen's. But the Bikurim, they go to the Kohen. If the Kohen himself declares them holy, they are holy. What if a person has a slave? And he says, I want to declare my slave as partially holy. Half of my servant is going to be holy to God. So you and the Kohanim become partners. But if you didn't say cherem to the Kohanim, you said cherem to God, or regular consecration, the entire slave is holy, as we explained. Whenever you declare half of somebody's body holy, the whole body becomes holy, because you can't live without half your body. If you consecrate non-Jewish slaves, maidservants, or you consecrate all your property and among them were slaves, their body becomes holy. You cannot benefit from the body of the slaves till they're redeemed, bought back from hektish. Now, how do you go about redeeming slaves? Says the Rambam, the temple treasury holding these slaves cannot tell a guy, hey, listen, give us their worth and we'll free the slaves, because that looks like they're treating it cheaply. They must sell the slaves as slaves to somebody else. In other words, someone has to buy them as a slave. And those guys can free the slaves if they want to. But the hektish doesn't have the right to free the slave. If somebody consecrates not his slave's body, his slave's hands, he basically wants that whatever handiwork the slave produces should be holy. Now you can't say that my slave's handiwork is holy, because that's not an object of substance. So you say, my slave's hands are holy. So the way it works is, whatever he produces above and beyond what his basic living needs are, becomes holy. How does the slave make a living? He must borrow money from somebody else and then produce work and pay back the debt. Because the moment he produces something by his hands, it automatically becomes holy. If he's paying it back as a loan, that's okay. He needs to create entities that are worth less than a pruta at a time and pay them back constantly. The moment you make a pruta worth of income, goes right to hektish. And therefore you have to make less than a pruta at a time and give it to your creditor to pay off the debt slowly but surely. Chaf hamakdish as atzmai. Can a person declare himself holy? I want to be hektish. Lo yihikdish ala damav. You've only considered your monetary value to be holy. You have to give to the temple your worth. But you can continue making stuff and eating from your handiwork because you haven't consecrated your body like a slave. Chaf Aleph. From now till the end of the chapter, we're going to have some basic rules that govern the laws of consecration. First of all, ein adam makdish davar she'ein shaloi. We had this before. A person cannot consecrate something which is not his. You have an independent entity, even if it's being supported by you, you can't make them holy. For example, Ketzat, you can't declare your son or your daughter to be cherem dedication to God, or your Jewish slave, or a field which you purchased, which really belongs to the original owner and is going to go back after Yovel. They're not considered dedicated. A person cannot consecrate something whose body doesn't belong to him. Similarly, a person cannot consecrate, even if it belongs to him, something which is not in his possession. If you don't have it in your domain right now, under your control, you can't make it holy. Ketzad, what does that mean, for example? You gave somebody a watch or a pen to watch. When you asked for it back, he denies having it. Now the owner cannot say, I want to make that pen or that watch consecrated, because it isn't in your property. But if the custodian, the watchman, doesn't deny it, then it's still called your domain, because he admits that it's yours. So you can say, my pen or my watch that's in your possession is holy. When do we say that? Movable property. But real estate, which somebody took possession of and denies that you're the owner, if you know that through legal process, through the judicial system, you'll be able to expropriate to get it back, you can make it holy even though you haven't yet expropriated it. You can't steal real estate. If someone's squatting, nowadays it's current events, there's big debates now, all over the U.S. with squatting rights, right?
I mean, California too.
California, New York, Florida is now doing good things.
Different laws in different states.
Exactly.
Just pass the law.
So this is the point here. You can't
squat
exactly at all. According to the Torah, even if someone does that, you still own real estate. You can't steal real estate. I can steal a car.
No matter what.
It's there. Like the land is there. So the land is always considered to be in the possession of the owner. If you rob your friend and the owners didn't give up from retrieving their object, neither the robber nor the person who was robbed from can make that object holy. The robber because it doesn't belong to him, and the owner because it's not in his domain. And the same thing applies in all similar situations. You had a guy selling eggs or pumpkins, squash. They used to be sold in individual units. It's like an egg market. Comes a buyer. He's not a robber. He means well. He's a buyer, and he takes one egg or one squash and he walks away. Maybe he'll pay it later or whatever. The question is, has the object transferred to the buyer? So the Rambam says, Im hayud kol achas va'achas ktsuvin. If there's a sign that says, hey, every egg costs 90 cents, or every squash costs $1. So then every individual unit has a price, and therefore hareza kimisha pasak. That's like it's already decided the price. And therefore the seller no longer has ownership over the pumpkin or the squash. It's not in his domain. Rather, the buyer can declare it holy. But if the price was not set and he still made it holy, mukdeshes, then the seller could make it holy. Because the seller still retains the property rights over it. The buyer didn't take it as a thief. He took it to pay later on credit. Since the price isn't set, the seller still owns it and has the rights to make it holy. The same thing applies in all similar situations. And now, the final rule for today is, Ein adam makdish davar shaloi bala olam. You cannot declare holy that which hasn't yet come into existence. What does that mean? Ketzad. Mashatale mitzudasim min hayam kodesh. You have this African fisherman over here, spreads his net, and he says, all the fish that I'm going to catch in my net are going to be holy. Or, Mashatoitzi sadezu min aperes cherem. Whatever this field produces fruit is going to be cherem. The fruits haven't come into existence yet, neither have the fish. Lo amar klum. So you've said nothing, it's worthless. A person tells a friend, you know, I just sold you a field, right? I'm going to buy it back. Or mukdeshes. I'm going to buy it back from you. When I do, I want it to become holy immediately. And then he buys it back. Eina mukdeshes. It's not holy. When you made it holy, it hadn't yet entered your property. And so, you don't have the rights to make it holy. It didn't exist for you. Similarly, a person tells his wife, all your earnings are going to be holy. She can produce whatever she needs to eat, and the rest is not holy, because she didn't make it yet. But if he says, I want your hands to become holy to the God who made them, since you have a right over her hands, they're on lien to you. So now going forward, whatever she produces is indeed holy, because the hands are in existence, and the hands you made holy. What's this like saying? A person says, this tree is holy. If you say the fruits that the tree is going to produce is holy, those fruits don't exist. But if you declare the tree is holy, then whatever the tree makes is also holy. Whatever fruits it will produce in the future is holy. And the same applies to all similar things. A person tells a friend, he owns the field right now. I'm going to sell you the field, then I'm going to buy it back, then it's going to be holy. Now, in this scenario, it is holy. The last time he had already sold it. The friend owned it, so you can't say when I buy it back it's holy. Here you own it now. Now it's in my hands to make it holy. What if you tell a guy, you owe a guy $1,000, and you gave him your field as collateral. So my field is now sitting by you as collateral. So I tell you, the field that I gave you as collateral, I'm going to redeem it. I'm going to pay you back the loan. I'm going to get the field back. When I do, the field will be holy. The moment I redeem it, it's holy. Because I have the power to redeem it. Even if it was on collateral for a specific time, it's still holy. Because the moment the time passes, I have the right to redeem it. I rent a house to you. I'm the landlord. You're my tenant. I rent you a house, and then I make it holy. I have the rights. I can make it holy, and the rental is revoked. So much so that if the renter keeps living there, the tenant keeps living there, he commits me'ilah, sacrilege, against using or misusing holy property. Lamed Aleph, Yeira'eli, it seems to me, says the Rambam Chidush, Sha'afal pi she'ena damakdish davar shalei bala olam, even though a person cannot say that an object which hadn't yet come into existence is going to be holy, im amar harei alai lahakdishai, if he says, I promise that when I get my fish, or when I get my fruit, I'm going to make it holy, harei zechayav lahakdishai kishayav elo olam mishum nidrai. Then, when it comes into existence, because you made a vow, you have to keep your vow and make it holy. So much so that if you don't make it holy, you transgress, delaying your vow, desecrating your word, and the third mitzvah of vows, to do whatever you say. Like any other vow. Lamed Beis Ketzah, what does this mean? A person says, I'm going fishing today. Whatever I'm going to bring up from the fishing, I'm going to then declare it holy. Or I hope it's going to be a good crop. When the field produces the crop, I'm going to give it to the poor people. Whatever money I make this year, I'm going to declare it as a cherem dedication or give it to captives. Anything like these statements, you have to give it and do what you said when the objects come to your hand. But it's under the umbrella of vows, not consecrations. The vow is that when I get it, I'm going to consecrate it. Quite unusual. The Rambam brings a proof historically. One of our very important Jewish ancestors did this. A proof to this matter, Masha Amar Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov said, before he left to Lavan's house, he said, God, make me successful. Whatever you're going to give me, I will take meiser, I will take a tithe. V'nemar, and then it says later, when Yaakov fulfilled this promise, it says, Hashem told him, Asher nodarta li sham neder. You made a vow to me. In other words, it's a vow. It's a commitment to later on give the money. Here's another parallel. A person says, Lo yepater min ha'olam ad she'ehyeh nazir. I will not leave this world till I become a Nazirite. Chayav lineg bin nazirus, v'af al pi shehadayin le'nader ben nazir. Right away you have to be a Nazir, right? Even if you didn't take an actual vow. Hayil ve'amar she'yider ben nazir. Since you committed to making a vow that you're going to be a Nazir, chayav lihi nazir. You have to become a Nazir. This case, committing to give tzedakah later, is the same thing. Because and this is the way a judge should rule. Says the Rambam, the final halacha, hekdesh tos einay hekdesh. A person who declares something holy by mistake, it's not holy. Ketzah, what's an example of that? Ha'emer, a person says, he's outside of his barn, and he says, Shor shachar sheyetze mibayis rishain hareyu hekdesh. The first black ox to come out is going to be holy. V'yatza lavan. Comes out a white ox. Holy or not? Says the Rambam, einay hekdesh, not holy. Because it was a mistake in hekdesh. Or you say, dinar zahav sheyale biyadi rishain hareyu hekdesh. I'm putting my hand into my wallet. The first gold coin that I pull out is holy. The Allah shall kesef. He pulls out a silver coin. Einay hekdesh, it's not holy. Chavis shel yayin shetale biyadi rishain hekdesh. I'm in my wine storehouse. The first barrel I pick up is holy. The Allah shel shemen, and you pick up an oil barrel. Bein shahayayin yakar min hashemen b'yisei makim, or hashemen yakar min hayayin. Whether wine is more expensive, oil is more expensive, doesn't matter. Einay hekdesh, it's not hekdesh, because it's a mistake. Hitfis ba'acheres v'amar. If the person would attach the holiness to another entity, v'amar, and he would say zu kazu, this one is like this one. Harei ashniya hekdesh, second one is holy. In other words, you said the first black ox to come out is holy. Came out a white ox is not holy. But if you attach the holiness to another black ox, the black ox does become holy, which is a very, very strange law. Because if the first guy is not holy, how can the second guy be holy? So one commentary says, the Radvaz says that here we go after the intent. You wanted an animal to become holy. Yes, this animal doesn't become holy, but in your mind it did. So if you then transfer the holiness, it works. But that's like a little bit of a doichik pshat, a forced pshat. The Kesef Mishnah says this is a new law. In general, a person has an object which is holy, and he wants to move its holiness to something else, it works. And the same applies to all similar situations.